Hey guys, I'm Chris from Old Vintage Melbourne, and I'm here today to provide you with a little insight into some of the incredible artefacts that have been discovered at the Melbourne Metro Tunnel excavations.
Yes, so this is the grocer store that was run by John Connell. Now, this grocer was set up as part of the property that was facing onto Swanston Street, and it was a grocer that was servicing the gold rush. And in 1855, we know actually the date, it was the 19th of September 1855, around 4 a.m. in the morning, the site burnt down. And John Connell had just restocked, and so the grocer was full of produce. And the fire was, the building itself was actually iron, it was an iron store, and the whole thing collapsed, and a lot of burnt deposit was then sort of left on the site. And so this burnt deposit and other artefacts around it really has become one of the most significant aspects of the archaeological assemblage on site.
All right, Jen, what have we got here? This is really cool.
Yeah, look, this was really puzzling. When they first came up, we kept getting these different shaped little things that looked like they must have been made of some kind of bready, doughy thing. People were suggesting dog biscuits, of course.
Yeah, that's what I thought originally.
Yeah, and what came up was a little book-shaped one with reading in relief on it. So we looked up reading and biscuits because we thought they might have been biscuits. And up came Huntley and Palmer's, who were a massive biscuit manufacturer from the 1830s and are still in operation today. And these little things are biscuits, 170-year-old biscuits made by Huntley and Palmer's. And they all have these little individual designs on them. And as with a lot of these artefacts, I think it really reflects what's going on in society at the time in terms of what they decide to put on a biscuit.
Yeah. So was it an Australian company?
No, it was an English company.
So do you think that shows also that Australians at the time, they still had that tie to England? Because surely there were Australian biscuits they could have bought.
Interesting point. Well, Swallow and Ariel, I think it was, opened up in around 1850. So they were locally available, and yet they were importing these biscuits from Huntley and Palmer's. And it was either aspirational, they may have had status associated with being English products, or it was just a harking back to the homeland.
Well, we're talking, 1850s, right? So, gold rush.
Yeah, a lot of people
wealth.
coming over.
Yep.
Yes, wealth,
Yep.
and a lot of recently emigrated English people.
Yeah. And could you see that wealth through what products were for sale at this grocery store?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. There were high-end products here. So what you can see, for instance, in these beautiful pot lids here, you see that this one has gilding around the edge. Now, there were versions of these pots, this one too, that had no gilding, and these were particularly made for the Great Exhibition, which was in around 1855. So very similar. They were very recently brought over, and they were the expensive versions.
Wow.
Now, these were designed to hold meat and fish pastes. People would have put them on their table and been very fashionable, especially at tea. They would have laid out their condiments, and people...
Who is that?
This is the Duke of Wellington, and he's a little bit like a Kardashian now.
Oh, wow.
So these are all depictions of popular culture. People loved the Duke of Wellington. He appears everywhere.
There we go. The first selfie.
Yep.
Eat your heart out, Kim Kardashian.
Absolutely. He had quite a prominent nose, and he was very beloved, same as the royals. So this is the Royal Osborne House. It's one of the residencies they acquired at that time, and I think you can't see it, but I think it has them standing out the front. We've got another version. We've also got depictions of the games they were playing. So these guys are playing checkers, while the woman, of course, is in the background looking after the kids. And there's also a dog in the foreground. We've got better preserved ones, but it's a little bit they're all in pieces and have been conjoined over time. So you've got the importance of pets gender roles,
Yep.
recreation.
And again, tie to England.
Yeah.
Is what I see. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about that also is the depiction of Pegwell Bay, which was a very popular English holiday destination. And we've got this light-hearted, it's basically an early version of cat humour. So we've got the rather large lady being carried across the water from the boat in Pegwell Bay. And so people would have taken that bought that as a souvenir, and that would have had probably shrimp paste in it.
Yeah.
We also have, just to show how recently these things had come across from England, so we were getting the latest products. We've got a depiction of Uncle Tom here, the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which had only been published in 1853. And so this again was popular culture.
Yeah.
That was coming out to Australia.
I imagine, it wasn't reality TV. It was the latest books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So going back to those biscuits, what have we got here? Because this looks
Yeah.
incredible. So I don't know if you can have a look, but that looks like a jar. And you
Yeah.
found it like that, with biscuits still inside?
Yeah, and interestingly, Huntley and Palmer's were known for their biscuit tins. We don't think that they would have come across in this jar. In fact, this jar is more likely associated with preserves, so it's been repackaged. And
You can't really get your hand into that jar.
no, look, it may have been oddments, broken biscuits that were sitting in a jar on the grocer's counter, and if people came to shop, their children might have been able to pick a biscuit out of the jar, because it's only got a tiny little hole in the top. So we think that's pretty special in that it's got
I mean, have a look at those. You can still see.
some of the design.
Look at the designs and the writing on there. It's magnificent.
So the conservators have done an amazing job at packaging these up.
There you've got Palmer written across
Yeah.
here. You've got a
Sailing
ship,
ship.
sailing ship. Incredible. So we also found a lot of organic remains at this site. So Jen, tell me a bit about what we've got in front of us.
Yeah, this was a bit of a surprise actually. We found a whole lot of coffee beans. I don't know if you can see them there, but they're perfectly preserved coffee beans. People were buying coffee at the local grocer and they'd take it home and have it for breakfast. This is something that we had a go at guessing what it was, and we determined that it was a type of macaroni they called pasta, macaroni and vermicelli back then. So the first pasta machine I think was in operation around 1840s, mass produced, but even in Dalesford they had their pasta factory going in the 1850s.
Wow.
So we may have been producing it locally and they may have been getting it from there. We've got some olive pips here. We had a lot of seeds and nut shells and things like that come up, too numerous to talk about here. But this one was fascinating. You can see it's kind
You can
of
actually see its skin. Yeah.
yeah, you can see it's kind of oily on the surface, and that turned out to be a citrus skin. So we think that it was preserved citrus. Now we know some of this because what we were really fortunate to do was because a lot of these were mystery items and we couldn't really work out what they were, and also some of them were preserved inside pots. We sent them to the University of Queensland, who did some biochemical and botanical analysis of the contents. So for instance, we learnt that some of the jars had tea in them.
Wow.
But we also found that they were mixed with mint, a little bit of hay, which may have been the process that they went through after they were put in the ground. They got mixed with other things, or it may be a sign of adulteration, which people were often doing, is they were getting this expensive tea and bulking it up with other things. So we've got pots that are associated with contents. The most exciting find from the University of Queensland was we had these bizarre little twisty objects. Yeah, which we called twisties just to kind of keep track of them. And we had no idea what they were. You can see they're kind of irregularly shaped but quite consistent. They kept coming up, the same types of bulbous shape, and it turned out to be preserved ginger. Now, we often find as archaeologists Chinese ginger jars. They're really common, but we never find the actual ginger. So we don't know of another instance where we've actually got the preserved ginger.
And do you think this is all a result of the fire? Without that, you think this wouldn't have survived?
No, I don't think it would have. There's only one other site that we can draw direct comparisons, and it was a site dug in the 80s in San Francisco, which was again another fire site. It was another store, but theirs kind of collapsed into the water, so they also had the added benefit of silt covering it over.
Wow.
So subject to intense fire, so had some of the same preservational properties, but then went and was covered in silt. So we can draw a lot of comparisons between what they were stocking and what the Australians were stocking. It's another gold rush site over there. So it's a really interesting comparison, separated in excavation terms by 50 years, and obviously a lot of advancements have happened in that time. So it'd be really interesting to go and have a look at those artefacts.
For sure. So we won't go into everything here, but what other things have we found? What other organic remains?
We've found
Fruits or...
fruits and nuts.
Yeah, fruits and nuts.
Beans.
Wonderful.
Peas and beans.
Lots and lots of peas, which we think were canned peas.
Yep.
The other thing, which is not organic but was really interesting, is, and another indication of wealth, were these little Vesta tins, and Vestas were very early matches. I think they're in here. Here we go. So these are, that's a whole tin there, and you'll see there's a whole lot of little lids. So these were called go to bed Vesta tins, and they were a variety that had come out in the 50s, 1850s. And you could put your little Vesta match in the top here and take it up to bed as a light, or you could put a little candle in there, and you could use it also to melt the wax for sealing a letter as well. I can't imagine they were particularly safe, but yeah, we've got a whole lot of these.
Is it one of these Vesta tins that maybe caused the fire?
Yeah, that's a really good point. The theory from John Connell himself, so there might have been a bit of an insurance thing going on, was that rats had run over the Vestas and caused this fire.
Interesting.
So we had about 50 of these little tins. We also had rat bones down in the cellar and cat bones, so there's a suggestion that a cat was kept down there to kind of keep the rats at bay.
Well, aren't we lucky the fire actually occurred? Because this is a real snapshot into Melbourne at the time. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic.